Thanks, Steve. So, as Steve said, I'm Neil from Compare the Market, and I am conscious that it is the end of day 2. Everyone's trying to recover from a really good day of different talks, but probably feeling a little bit sleepy, so I'm here to tell you a story. And I'm here to tell you the story of our 5 million downloads app. And just by way of context, this is the path that we've taken to 5 million. I'll go into a lot more detail in a while, but we launched back in 2015, almost 4 years ago to the day. And then we hit 5 million on 21st of January 2019. And you'll see there's been quite a bit of fluctuation in the speed it's taken to reach some of those millions. So I'll go into a bit more detail of that, but for us to really start telling the story of our app, we actually have to go back a little bit further in time. In fact, back to 2001 BC, and obviously when I say BC here, I mean before comparison. So a little bit of audience participation. Try and cast your minds back to 2001, those who are old enough to remember 2001. What do you think the best-selling single of 2001 might have been? Anyone? It wasn't Me by Shaggy. What about the most watched TV program? It was Only Fools and Horses. Now this one I expect everyone to shout out for. What do you think the best-selling mobile phone was? But getting insurance in 2001 was a very different beast. It basically involved having to get out this big yellow book, which, again, some of you may not even remember, and dialing around a number of different insurers. So you've maybe called 2, 3, 4 insurers, spend maybe 30, 40 minutes on the phone to each one of them, answering 100 questions, and then probably have to go back to the first one because they were the cheapest and answer all the questions again. So we weren't the first, I freely admit that, but in 2002, price comparison did come to the UK, and this let customers have the opportunity to fill in just one form and then get hundreds of prices back from different insurers. So the world is a very happy place. 3 years later, in 2005, CompareTheMarket.com launched. And this is one of our very first TV adverts. One of the things that you'll notice is that there was a relentless focus on price. So when price comparison first came to the UK, people thought that that's all customers really cared about. And so it would all be about, you could save £230 on your car insurance, and then Money Supermarket would come along and say, you can save £235 on your car insurance. And it was just a battle to try and see who could get across that price-saving message. We saw that as a massive opportunity. So back in 2008, in this wonderful office in Peterborough, where Compare the Market has our head office, we realized that we were in a crowded space, and our market share at the time wasn't great. We weren't able to break through to be one of the well-known brands. And as I said before, everyone was just relentless focus on price, and so there was no differentiating message. And so we asked advertising agencies to come in and pitch different ideas. And this meeting goes down into the annals of Compare the Market history, in that at the very end of the day, one of the agencies pitched an idea that even they thought was a little bit crazy, and they absolutely didn't expect us to go for it. And it was based on a very, very simple premise. Market sounds a little bit like Meerkat. So they set to work. We said, okay, let's go for it. So in 2009, we introduced Aleksandr. He is an aristocratic meerkat, lives in a mansion, and had his own website called CompareTheMeerkat.com, and he would get annoyed that people were going to his website looking for insurance. In 2009, Aleksandr hit our TV screens, and this is the very first Compare the Market advert featuring Alex.
I am Aleksandr, founder of CompareTheMeerkat.com, where we compare meerkats. Size, hobbies, you know. But lately we get many people looking for car insurance. People looking for CompareTheMarket.com. I cannot find you cheap car insurance. For Compare Meerkats, come to CompareTheMeerkat.com. For easy way to save on car insurance, please go to CompareTheMarket.com. Simples.
So this was a big risk. We weren't sure how customers would take to this. And the answer was massively. By the end of 2010, Aleksandr had written his own autobiography, which was number 7 in the Amazon best-selling books of 2010, and beat the likes of Stephen Fry and Tony Blair in terms of sales of their autobiography. And that word simples at the end of that advert was actually added to the Collins English Dictionary. You may have noticed a couple of weeks ago in Parliament, Theresa May actually used the word simples, and that was a great day for us. So, we had this new character which the nation absolutely loved, and what we kept hearing is like, where can I get one of those? How can I get an Aleksandr or another one of the Meerkats? So we listened, and in 2011, we launched our first customer reward. So if you bought a qualifying product from us, then you could get a Meerkat toy. And again, we weren't sure how these would go down, but we gave well over 1 million Meerkat toys just in the first year. We've given away many, many more millions since then. Particularly when in 2013, we introduced a new member of the Meerkat family, little baby Oleg. So it was great for us in that we had got a character and a proposition that was really resonating with customers to the point that they wanted to come and buy from Compare the Market in order to be able to get a toy. But there are a few problems with giving away a physical product as a reward. Insurance is a semi-annual purchase, so you might buy car insurance, maybe home insurance, maybe travel, maybe life. And so you buy the product, you get the reward, and then you don't think about Compare the Market until you next have a need. And the challenge is, are we going to be front of mind at that point of need, which means that we still have to be investing huge amounts of money in TV advertising, etc., to make sure that we are front of mind. So we were thinking about, is there something else that we could offer our customers that could foster a longer-term relationship with them? Meanwhile, it was announced that Orange Wednesdays, which had been running for about 10 years, and which offered 2-for-1 cinema tickets for customers of Orange and then EE when EE became Orange, or Orange became EE rather, was going away. They decided they didn't want to offer it anymore. So by then, we were in a different office in Peterborough. This is the beautiful office that I work in today. And people were thinking, okay, so we've got this toy reward, people love it, but it doesn't help to foster that long-term relationship that we want to have with customers. There's a reward over there, which is up for grabs, and maybe we could even make it better than it is today. And so it was quite literally a light bulb moment, and we decided that we were going to launch Meerkat Movies. So Meerkat Movies is a really close working partnership with the film and cinema industry, where you get 2-for-1 cinema tickets for a whole year, and you can use it on either a Tuesday or Wednesday, or it's redeemed via a weekly code. And this was really important, that it would require you to come back every time you wanted to redeem the reward back into the Compare the Market ecosystem. I'll leave Alex again to tell you a little bit more about it.
Take any friend, every week, all year. 2-for-1 cinema tickets, only when you buy so comparethemarket.com.
So we now had this reward where we knew it was going to be coming in a few months' time. It was going to be this weekly redemption mechanic. And there was a realization back in the very early start of 2015, they're going to need an app. We knew that Meerkat Movies would be launching in early April, but we'd never had an app before, and we certainly didn't have any skills to build an app. We basically had just over 3 months to launch an app that was going to allow customers to redeem a weekly code. So how were we going to do it? Simple answer, outsource it. So the design was completed by our agency in London, which helped us on many of our other products. We did have all of the back-end services built by our team out in Peterborough, but the native iOS and Android development was actually completed by an agency partner out in Barcelona. And to their credit, they did design, develop, and release an app in those 3 months. We launched it at the very end of March, ready for a big TV advert with Arnold Schwarzenegger on April the 3rd. So, The other interesting thing to point out here is that I joined Compare the Market in January 2015. And originally I joined effectively as head of mobile, defining the strategy for the app. Challenge was that they'd had to make some very, very quick decisions. And I was told, you know what? We're working to a very aggressive launch date. So what we'd like you to do is to leave them alone, and you can have the app after they're finished and take it from there. So, yay, we've got an app, but I then inherited it and spent quite a long time unpicking some of the decisions that were made for that first app, and we're living through some of them now. One of the first challenges was, well, what do we call it? Because we always had this vision of the app shouldn't just be about our rewards, it should be an all-encompassing Compare the Market experience for our customers. There were things that were stopping us from being able to do some of our comparison products in the app right then, which I'll come on to in a while. But we'd always had this vision of Compare the Market in your pocket, or CTM in your pocket. But we knew we were making a massive marketing investment in raising awareness of this new thing that we were launching called Meerkat Movies. And besides, comparethemarket.com was too long to fit on an app icon anyway. And so it was decided that we would launch with Meerkat Movies as the app name. Along with that interesting name choice for the app were some quite interesting design decisions. So this is effectively the first release, and it was quite limited in its functionality. But it was effectively one long parallax screen that would slide to left and right depending on the customers finding the top left eye and person icons, which no one ever did anyway. And they didn't really offer an awful lot of extra value. And you had this weird thing, how to use a voucher code, would just slide up over the main screen as well. It was all a little bit confused. But perhaps one of the most interesting decisions was that you had to shake to redeem your voucher code, which means you had to physically pick up your phone, shake it like this, and then you get your voucher code. How we didn't end up with customers claiming for a phone that had been thrown across the room, I don't know, but it was the only way to redeem your code, was to shake your phone. But we had an app, we'd launched it to the App Store, and because we're Compare the Market, we had Aleksandr do a launch video for us. So this isn't something that went on TV, we put it on our own website, YouTube, etc. It is still my favorite Meerkat advert. So I'll share that one with you too.
Greetings from the Hollywoods. When you are a member of Meerkat Movies, there are two simple ways to get voucher code. You can either go to comparethemarket.com on your computer, my bob, or you can use one of these. This, my friends, is called smartphone, top of range in Mirkovo. You can use to download Meerkat Movies app. Activate membership, then give big check and hey pesto. Voucher code appears ready to take to cinema. It is, as I always say, simples. Sergey, that's my line. Get your own catchy phrase.
I love get your own catchy phrase. So we had an app. I had taken over responsibility for it by then. And what we were finding is working with an outsource partner was just making us move far too slowly. It genuinely was taking us 2 weeks for them to make a very, very simple text change to one screen. Had to fill in a request form, obviously had to go through full QA suite. And we were just moving far, far too slowly. I mentioned earlier that the back-end services that powered our rewards, both for Toy and for Meerkat Movies, was developed in-house by our team in Peterborough. It was them that said, you know what, I think we can do this better. They were frustrated dealing with the front end to their back end services. And they wanted to do a spike to prove that they could effectively build a HTML hybrid version using web technologies of the app we had today. And they proved it. In a couple of weeks, they basically rebuilt the app using web technologies just as a proof point. Obviously, it took a little bit longer to refine it, but we decided to use the expertise that we did have in-house, which was around web technologies, and to build a hybrid app. The advantage of hybrid meant that we could write once and distribute it to iOS and Android, and ultimately to also the Amazon Android store. And we used Cordova to emulate some of the native functionality, and we did manage to get Shake to Redeem still working even through that web technology. The advantage of bringing it in-house, though, meant that we could look at, are there ways that we can make this app better? So we had a very firm belief that some of the basics we hadn't got right, and particularly some of those interesting design decisions that had been made. So there was a belief that if we can get the basics right, the results will follow. Now, I know this is a quote. I can't remember where it came from. I tried to find it. The best I could find was an advert for deodorant. I don't think that's the source. We called it Brilliant Basics. And one of the first things we wanted to start with was this idea of shaking your phone to reveal. Some customers loved it, and we didn't want to take it away, but all we did was, you can tap or shake. So you could tap that ticket or you could shake. And within about 2 weeks, it was about 80% people who were tapping it. One of the other things you'll notice here is we just upped the font size or emboldened the font a little bit. And we introduced the word weekly, and this was because we did have some people who thought that they had one code that lasted 12 months, and they would print a screen and even print it out on a piece of paper, and they were taken to the same code to the cinema every single week. So just reinforcing things like your weekly 2-for-1 voucher code. One of the other big challenges we had was around logging in. And the challenge here was that because Meerkat Movies was a new proposition, people thought they had to have a separate Meerkat Movies account to their Compare the Market account. Actually, if they didn't use their Compare the Market account, the same one that they used to buy the product in the first place, we couldn't match them to the reward. And so people were creating accounts where they already had one or creating brand new accounts because there wasn't a correlation for them between this and the Compare the Market account. Yes, it says to get started, sign in with your comparethemarket.com account, but nobody reads that, and we know nobody reads that. The visual cue is right at the bottom of the screen next to the sign-in button rather than at the top where it should be. So again, we upped the font size a little bit. We put the Compare the Market logo right at the top. And we removed the ability to create an account, which sounds weird, but this was a proposition for existing customers to be rewarded for a purchase they'd already made. This wasn't the kind of app where you should be creating an account with us. So instead, we said, look, if you haven't already got an account, you're probably new to Compare the Market. So here's a chance for us to do a little bit of propositional messaging, send you off to the website to make a purchase. I mentioned the claim a code screen and some of the things that we did around emboldening the main voucher code. One of the other interesting things you'll notice there is that we bunched up the 8 characters where previously it had been split 4-4 for the code itself. That actually came as a request from the cinema industry. So we put it as 4-4 because we thought it was just easier to read and for customers to read out a number. What actually was happening was that number needed to be redeemed in the box office at the cinemas, and the tools that the cinemas were using wouldn't accept spaces. So they were constantly entering spaces and failing, and it was a little bit of frustration. They'd remember after a second, oh, we don't need to use a space. But it was frustration that they need to be there, so we took the space away. The other thing we added is this thing at the bottom. So instead of how to use a voucher code, which everyone kind of knew anyway, we tried to reinforce, yay, we know who you are, this is the reward you've got, and here's until when you've got it until. So the question is, how did we know that the one on the right-hand side is better than the one on the left-hand side? And this is where a personal passion comes in. I'm an absolute advocate for user-centered design, and it's something that we'd not really done to a great extent to Compare the Market before I joined. Very simply, user-centered design is making sure that you involve customers every single step of the way as you're building products. We're at the stage now where we will literally put a couple of words on a piece of paper and bring customers in and have them talk about it. But back in the day, we would often release things to customers without having shown it to any of them. And the first iteration of the app was a good example of that. So we've learned an awful lot, the power of involving customers. We didn't necessarily have the facilities in place to be able to do it. And so it was me in a meeting room with a MacBook Pro, cheap microphone that I got off Amazon, and some free technologies, specifically one called Open Broadcaster software, which allowed me to take the input from the camera on the MacBook, the mic, and an iPhone plugged in using QuickTime to share it to the Mac screen. And then I could stream all of that to YouTube so that the team that were developing the app could see firsthand some of this customer feedback. Great example of how that had an effect is back to that congratulations message, which I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. We did 2 rounds of testing on the Monday and the Wednesday, and on the Monday, we had the version on the left-hand side. We had 6 participants, not a single one of them spotted the congratulations message at the bottom of the screen. So we weren't prompting them for it. They didn't mention it. We're like, it's a bit weird. We think there's something good in this, so I'm surprised they haven't mentioned it. And somebody said, well, it looks a little bit like a banner ad. And literally, you know, you can look at it now and say, yeah, of course it does. And people are just blind to it. They've just switched off. And so one of our designers said, I reckon if you just bring it in a little bit from the edges, it will be more visible. So it doesn't feel like a banner ad. And it was actually one of our developers who said, I reckon if you make it slightly transparent, it will also come through more. And it was amazing. On the Wednesday, 6 out of 6 participants not only spotted it, proactively made mention of it, and said it was a good thing. So this, for me, is the real power of user-centered design. We would not have got that insight in any other way other than watching people use the product. I mentioned some of the interesting aspects of working in the world of Meerkats. One of them is the app icon. One day, I got a message saying, we need to change the icon. Like, why? Well, it looks a bit angry. I'm like, okay, give me a new icon then. So they did. I said, you happy now? And said, yes, that's better. These are genuinely some of the conversations that we have inside Compare the Market. So we'd released in March. And very quickly, we'd realized that this was something that was proven to be really popular with our customers. We started trending on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the app stores. We'd started developing the hybrid app. That released to customers on September the 24th. So it took us about 6 months to move from the initial release of the native apps to the hybrid apps. And then about a month later, we hit our first 1 million downloads. So everything's going swimmingly. So what we need to do now is disrupt everything again. So the challenge was there was something really big coming with our rewards, which I'll come on to in a moment, which meant that the team that had been building our back-end services and hybrid app needed to make sure that the back-end services could scale and had to be rewritten for what was coming next. They simply couldn't spend any time on the app. We realized that it was still such a struggle to find native or hybrid app developers in Peterborough. So Compare the Market had been thinking at the time that maybe we need to find a London office. And it was decided that, yeah, we should do it, and we should have mobile be the first team that's based in London. And so we moved into a place called Albert House, very near Old Street Roundabout in London, as a very temporary space. Initially, it was me and 2 other guys in a tiny little meeting room. Eventually, we had the top floor of Albert House. So as I said, the app was going well, and one thing that we realized was that we had a lot of people coming into the app. They weren't necessarily always redeeming the reward, but for customers who were using the reward and going to the cinema, they were the ones who were going to come back more often and more engaged. More importantly, they're more likely to buy something from us again next year because they're getting the value from the reward. So the question was, could we inspire people to use the reward and go to the cinema? So we thought the solution would be to bring in some movies content. So we worked with a small startup who specializes in exactly that. So aggregating content around film data, such as trailers, synopsis, cast lists, etc., plus cinema details, maps, show times, locations, phone numbers. And they created for us some bespoke web pages based on their original designs, but that matched well with our app. And we basically used iframe to pull them into our app experience just as a first test. And this became the first job for the London team, was let's bring some movies content into the experience and see if it makes a difference. I mentioned something big was coming in the background. We decided that through our relationship with the film and cinema industry, we had the opportunity to build some really interesting characters. We knew that there was still a love for toys, and actually we never took toys away as we introduced movies. But a lot of people actually got the whole collection of 7 Meerkats at the time and were constantly looking for something new. And so we started doing the movies toys. These are all the ones we've ever done. But the first one was the one in the top right to support Batman versus Superman. And this was a really interesting job for the mobile team in London as well. So how can we support these big campaigns? How can we make it so we don't need to do a new App Store release every time one of these campaigns come out? So the first time we started doing some basic remote configuration. So we had server-side JSON files that could trigger an interstitial screen before you got into the main app and have some content around it. And also we could change the main background image on the voucher code screen to support a big campaign. One of the other things that we did was start to do push notifications. So this was Tuesday, the 1st of March. By now, this would have been 2016. There was about 260 people in the app. As an aside, at this time, 10:12 this morning, I looked to see how many people we had in the app today, just to see how far we'd moved on. It was 3,300. So things have definitely moved on since those days, but 260 was about normal for a Meerkat Movies day, where it was still quite early in the day. People would often come and log on late afternoon and think about going to cinema that evening. And so we said to our new back-end rewards team, who just built this new infrastructure to support everything around toys, we want to send a push notification. And they said, no. So what do you mean no? It's like, well, we've only just launched this brand new platform. It's the first time we've moved it into the cloud. So you've got auto-scaling, haven't you? It's like, yes. So why can't I do it? It's like, no, because we literally just launched it this morning. I said, aren't we sending an email out to 3 million people at 11 o'clock? They said, yes. I said, well, the app has never had more than 2,000 people in it as a result of us sending a push notification in the tests we've done. Okay, fine. So we sent this message. Our most heroic reward yet has landed. Tap now to reveal or visit, compare the market for more info. 7 minutes later, we had 12,500 people in the app. And through the day, it was our biggest day in the app by far. And we had 4 times what we would normally expect. It is fair to say that our back-end services team were not thrilled with the fact that this had happened, but it stayed up. It went a bit slow, but it stayed up. And for me, I was like, well, sorry. Except I wasn't really sorry, because I was really pleased that the app had already got to a point where it could almost bring down the entire compare the market infrastructure. Because not only had it affected our rewards, but it also affected our sign-in services, because customers had forgotten their password, they hadn't used the app for a while, and that almost came down to it. But everything was fine. Everything stayed. So we launched the app with the movies content, and we very, very deliberately put the content to the side to understand, is this going to have an influence on behavior? So we hid it under the well-loved hamburger menu that we had at the time. And about 5 to 10% of customers found it, but what we found is that those customers who were finding the content were massively more engaged than those that weren't. And so on average, they're spending about 2.5 minutes longer in the app. So we took this as an opportunity to think about putting that movie's content front and center. Because we were thinking about a wholesale redesign by now, we had been hiring native developers in the London office. I'm not quite sure where the disconnect was, where we had a hybrid app and we're hiring native developers, but they were understandably saying, look, if you want to put that movie's content front and center and make it a beautifully smooth experience, hybrid is probably not going to be the way to go for this. Now, I know technology has moved on an awful lot, but they were able to demonstrate at the time smoother scrolling, quicker loading, etc., than if we were to stay with hybrid. And so we're like, okay, fine. Let's do that then. We also had our startup who were managing the movies content itching to write an API instead. So instead of us using iframes, we would just literally pull in their content and render it ourselves on the page. So we released a newly designed app in October 2016, where we've just brought that movie's content front and center. Independently, a couple of weeks later, we hit 2 million downloads. So we launched this in October 2016. That's context, really, for what I'm about to show you, because there are some stats that are shared at the end, which at the time we were amazed by. Now they pale by comparison as to where we are. But we made an internal video just to showcase the new app, the new features that we'd introduced, and the early performance of it. The team from Compare the Market that are here will probably laugh at some of those coming in 2017 things. We did one of those too. I'll explain why in a moment. So I mentioned that we were in this temporary office space. The reason that we were in the temporary space is that we knew we were going to be moving to a new London office, literally right on Silicon Roundabout or Old Street Roundabout in London. And we were told that the new building had a rooftop bar rather, and a running track on the roof. It really does have a rooftop bar and a running track on the roof. At the time, I saw this as a big opportunity. I mentioned earlier about this passion for user-centered design and involving customers who build the product. So I said, please, can we have a usability lab in the new office? First reaction was, what's a usability lab? And then once I'd explained that it would be a way of us bringing customers in and having the product teams watch customers who are building the products, they kind of understood, but it wasn't really until the plans for the building came out and I saw Usability Lab on there that I knew that that had been successful. And I was very lucky to actually go and watch it being built out as well and to specify all the equipment, even the paint on the walls as we were building it. So we're up to 2017 now, and we moved into our lovely new offices and the Usability Lab opened. I mentioned there being two things coming in 2017. One of those was opening up the app. You may have noticed I was talking about some of those stats that we spoke about, the fact that we were now showing every cinema in the UK, even those that didn't support Meerkat movies. And where we were doing links to cinema websites, you could do that 7 days a week. So we thought we'd actually built a really good cinema-going app. And why should we restrict it just to people who got the reward? And so we decided to embark on a process of opening up the app to non-Meerkat Movies members. So you didn't have to have bought from Compare the Market or even be a Compare the Market customer to use it as a cinema-going app. And this was one of the first that could be tested in the new lab. We'd also started to bring in our own UX design team, and my own responsibilities evolved to be not only responsible for the mobile app, but also responsible for that UX team as well. And the opening up the app project was the first one where we had research, design, and development all happening, not only in the same building, but literally within the same small area. So it meant that people could sit together much more often, talk through things. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to explore, could we make the app experience a little bit more interesting at startup and bring some of it to life through animation? So here you've got real current films moving in, your real local cinemas sliding through to kind of guide you to some of the things that you might see in the app when you go through to the main screens. The great thing was that we could have the designer and the developers sat together. The designer would write this is a Flinto prototype, but then the developer would sit with them and they'd work together on things like frame rates. Is that quite right? Is that not? So the power of having the developers and then being able to take it into the room to do the research. So we launched the new app with guest access in July 2017. And we had 3 million downloads by November 2017. This was about 2.5 years after we'd first launched. But something big was coming, and we heard murmurs of something new. So we decided to introduce a new reward, Meerkat Meals. So Meerkat Meals, I think, is an amazing promotion. So it's 2 for 1 on starters, mains, and desserts across 4,000 restaurants in the UK, Sunday to Thursday, for up to 6 people. And unlike the movies where you could use it either on a Tuesday or a Wednesday each week, you can use this as many times as you want to. If you really want to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 365 days a year, 364 days a year, we don't support Christmas Day, then you can do. And the best thing is that it was our most generous reward because customers will get not only Meerkat Movies, but Meerkat Meals for one single purchase. But the challenge was that our app was called Meerkat Movies and we just introduced Meerkat Meals into it, or wanted to introduce Meerkat Meals into it. So what were we going to do? Denied for quite a while, but it was quite a simple solution in the end. So we decided to just call the app Meerkat, and actually it started to fit really well with the fact that we had started to bring the Meerkats a little bit closer into the Compare the Market world. And so way back in the day, with that very first TV advert, it was Aleksandr being angry about him owning Compare the Meerkat site and comparethemarket.com being separate. But it'd been 10 years, and customers that absolutely equated being the Meerkats with Compare the Market. And so one of the first things we did was change our logo. No one noticed, But now when we say to people, who's that, even without the compare the market bit, they know it's compare the market, because they're the ones with the Meerkats. So we decided to call the app Meerkat, and to bring all of that rich restaurant search functionality, similar to the ones that we had for cinema, into the app. So we launched Meerkat Meals July last year, and we did some of our usual campaigns. So we did a big TV advert, we did display advertising outdoors, and for the first time, we started testing the 6-second YouTube's video slots.
A whole year of deliciousness, only with Meerkat Meals.
2 for 1 on starters, mains and desserts, stretched out for the whole year.
So we have a lot of technology partners that power parts of the experience in the app, and one of them was looking at some of the statistics after Meals had launched. And they said to us, we've never seen a hockey stick like it. Can you guess when Meals launched? So we went from bubbling around about 700,000 monthly users to within a couple of months or so of launching Meerkat Meals to touching 1.5 million. And we hit 4 million downloads on the 11th of August, 2018. But the fact that we changed the name of the app started to resolve some of those initial concerns we had of how we're going to make this an all-encompassing compare the market experience if we call it Meerkat Movies. On top of that, we had re-architected some of those comparison products so that they're now based on microservices where we could put our own front-end UI on top of it easier than being able to before. But we needed to truly understand this had now been live for, we're up to now 3.5, 4 years. Was it going to be okay to put comparison products inside the app? So we commissioned some research to find out, and what we learned was yes, and in fact, people get that there's a correlation between them having bought from Compare the Market and got the reward. So it's like, let's not run away from what this is. This is Compare the Market. More to the point, they expected to find the comparison products in there, and they would extrapolate themselves over the kind of features that they would like to have in there. Things like I'd like it to be a hub for all my purchases. What we also knew was that people wanted it to feel relevant and personalized to them. So, put the products that I hold first, as an example. They didn't just want us to do the comparison journeys as they existed on the website and put them inside the app. We also learned through some of this research that for all that great work we'd done on movies, a lot of customers were just coming in, redeeming the voucher code, and didn't even realize that we had some of that great functionality. So we heard things like, it'd be good to show movies at my local cinema. It's like, yeah, I've been doing that for 2 years, Brenda. So what we learned was that, yeah, absolutely, we can introduce non-rewards functionality into our app, but they had to feel relevant and engaging from day one, and they couldn't just feel like so what experiences. They couldn't just be that just dump our existing comparison products inside the app. And it was my head of UX design who said, we need to remember the baby ducks. I'm like, the what now? So I didn't know this, but apparently baby ducks do something called imprinting, where they have an immediate emotional attachment to the first moving thing they see after they hatch. Now, ordinarily you would hope that this would be the mother, but there have been examples of where baby ducks have attached themselves to something else, and nothing will convince them that this is not their mom. When I was doing dry runs of this, people were like, I didn't get the baby duck thing, what are you on about? Well, simply saying is like, if you put in people's mind that all you're going to get is a lukewarm experience, doesn't matter how much you make it better in the future, they will have it in their head that that's what I'm going to get through the Compare the Market app. Or to put it another way, you get one chance to make a first impression. And interestingly, we knew that there were genuine customer problems to solve here that could take us beyond the existing comparison space. Specifically, just keeping on top of all that household admin is a real problem. And particularly when you think about energy, there's a real inertia in that market. People just can't be bothered. They even get worried that will switching energy supply mean I haven't got my gas and electricity for a couple of days. Of course it doesn't, but there's a perception there. And then people just drift into standard variable tariffs, which are really expensive or can be really expensive. So we thought there was a great opportunity here to expand beyond just our regular comparison. And we started building something called Energy Autocheck, where, yeah, you can come and get an energy quote, but actually, it's in those final few days of your current tariff where, by regulation, the companies are not allowed to charge you an exit fee to switch to another provider. So there's a particular point in your tariff journey that it's likely to be that's the best time to switch. So with Energy Autocheck, we could have people give us preferences like, I want to save at least this much money, and I want to have at least this star rating for a provider. And if you can't save me money today, just be constantly checking in the background and let me know when is the best time to switch based on those personalized parameters. So for us, it was a great candidate to be a not just comparison experience. It was also a great opportunity for us to build what we call our atomized or one thing at a time comparison journey. So if you come to our app today, you'll see Energy Check front and center. And you'll see this one screen at a time kind of experience rather than many form fields on a page if you were to view this on our mobile web. The other thing we introduced is what we call humanized support. The problem with comparison is that because it's online only, we know that there are specific points in the journey where people might have a question. So we've done so much research now, we've spoken to so many customers, we know where these pain points are. We know the kind of questions that people would ask. Kind of want to make it okay for people not to be sure and to preempt those questions. So at the bottom of every screen, we introduce a little bit of extra support that you can tap on, and it gives you some context to answer the question that's on the screen right now. And through that user-centered design process, it's been a real evolution to the screen that we actually launched at the end of December last year. So originally we were thinking that, well, this could just be one of many reminders. And we led with a navigation called Reminders. Then we thought, well, no, it's really more about products. But we were only really making energy that beautiful native experience. So, and it felt a bit weird the way that it was designed. And ultimately we ended on, let's just your home screen for now, where rewards needs to shine through. It's the dominant use case that customers are coming to the experience today, but we also need to support the comparison journeys in here as well. And to that point, energy allowed us to fulfill that baby ducks analogy of setting expectations high, that you're going to get something a bit different from our app than from the regular comparison journeys. But the challenge for us was, what if a customer did want one of the other comparison journeys? Should we just not make it possible? So we decided that for now, we will offer those other products inside web containers. And so this is the app loading today. You'll see Energy Check at the top, and then you'll see our other products in a scrolling carousel. And a customer can choose to go to one of these other experiences. And what was really important for us was for it to be really clear that if you tapped on car insurance, we're now taking you to the Compare the Market website. So the customers understood that that's why the experience looks slightly different. So our app ambitions now are so big that we realized that just having one development team based in London just wasn't big enough for us. So one of the first things we did was some re-architecture. I'm not technical, so if you want to know more about that, then speak to one of the other people wearing the Compare the Market t-shirts, and I'm sure they'll tell you more about it. But what that allowed us to do was to have multiple teams operating on the app at the same time. And specifically, it allowed us to work with a partner that we were already using for some of our web services based in Minsk. So we now have 2 mobile engineering teams. The top right is one of the first get-togethers of the London and Minsk team. So we had our TV campaign for Energy Switch launched on Boxing Day. And as part of that, it introduced a brand new Meerkat character and also played a little bit of homage to someone you might know.
Modern life is complicated. Life administrations are such hard work. Why can't technology make life simple? Well, today it can. Say hello to Autocheck.
Hello, I'm here to simplify your life.
Autocheck is just like real Sergey, but without the fleas. So relax while he do all the stuff you don't want to. Let's start with energy. If he thinks you're paying too much...
Aleksandr, I just found you a better energy deal. Would you like to switch?
Sure.
High five.
See how Autocheck could make switching the energy easier. Compare the market. Keep life simple.
So we released that at the end of December. The advert went live on Boxing Day, and we hit 5 million downloads on 21st of January this year, and this was our fastest incremental million ever. That's pretty much the end of the story, except that it's been fairly positive to now. So I want to share one thing that went badly wrong through this process. Today I'll really remember. It was on November the 30th, 2016. It's my wife's birthday, although that had no particular relevance. But we received an email from Google saying, "Hi, we've taken your app down. It's not available on the store anymore." And the reason for this is that you're using copyright images from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them in the app experience. It's like, well, yeah, we are doing, because we've got a massive promotion that we're working with Warner Brothers on right now to put it at the front of our app. And it ended up being a very, very circular conversation for 2 days between ourselves, the head of Google Play for Europe, Warner Brothers legal teams in the UK and the US, and the UK Cinema Association, before we eventually managed to get back into the store. So in summary, our journey to 5 million downloads has involved 4 different engineering locations in Barcelona, Peterborough, London, and Minsk, 3 different technology stacks, native twice, hybrid, and then native with web containers, 2 different app names, Meerkat Movies and Meerkat, and 1 unintentional store removal. Thank you very much, Google, for that one. But the journey has really just begun. It has been a roller coaster, but we're excited for what's next. Just one more thing. Remember this slide? I showed this at the very beginning. So obviously what was interested me as I was building out this presentation is like, well, where are we today? And so I looked at the data, and on the 23rd of March, we hit 6 million downloads. So this hasn't actually been the behind-the-scenes story of a 5 million downloads app. It's been the behind-the-scenes story of a 6 million downloads app. Thank you very much.